She texted me after dinner, the same dinner I wasn't invited to. "There are leftovers in the fridge. Heat them up so they don't go to waste." I stared at those words, lit by the glow of my phone, and felt something inside me go still. That was the moment I realized I could no longer live where I was treated like an afterthought. My name's Brenda Turner, and if you're listening to this, I want to know, where are you watching from tonight? Because wherever you are, I hope you've never had to taste the kind of loneliness that comes from sitting in a house you helped build, yet feeling like you don't belong in it anymore. But before I tell you what happened that night, the night that changed everything, I need to take you back to where it all began. Back to when I still believed that love, respect, and family meant the same thing. When my husband Raymond passed away 5 years ago, I thought my life had gone quiet for good. He was the kind of man who hummed gospel hymns while fixing leaky faucets and kissed me on the forehead every morning before heading to the garage. After the funeral, the house was too big, too silent, and too filled with memories that hurt to touch. It was my son, Daniel, who suggested I move in with him and his wife, Samantha. "Mom, we have plenty of space," he said over the phone one evening. "It'll be good for all of us. You can help with little Jonah, and we'll be right there if you need anything." At first, I hesitated. I'd always been independent. I'd raised Daniel to stand tall, to work hard, and to treat people kindly. I didn't want to feel like a burden. But then Samantha got on the line, warm, sweet, enthusiastic. "Oh, Brenda, please come," she said. "You're family. We'd love to have you." And so, I packed up 40 years of marriage photographs, recipes, letters, memories, and moved into their newly built 2-story home on the outskirts of town. The first months were beautiful. I still remember the smell of Sunday mornings there, pancakes sizzling, Jonah giggling as I wiped flour from his cheeks, Samantha humming softly while setting the table. We had dinner together every night, laughing over small things. Daniel would tell me about his work at the construction firm, and Samantha, a rising star in a marketing company, would talk about campaigns, deadlines, clients. They made me feel needed again, useful. I would pick Jonah up from preschool, bake his favorite oatmeal cookies, and tell him bedtime stories about how his grandfather once saved a stray dog in the middle of a rainstorm. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Samantha said, "I don't know what we'd do without you, Brenda." That single sentence felt like sunlight after a long winter. I wanted to make their lives easier. So when Daniel mentioned their mortgage was heavy, I offered part of my savings money Raymond and I had set aside for retirement trips we'd never take. "I don't need it sitting in a bank," I said. "You two have a future to build." Daniel hesitated, but Samantha was quick to accept. "That's so generous, Mom," she said. That was the last time she called me Mom. After that, little things began to shift, not enough to name, but enough to feel. Samantha started rearranging things in the kitchen, the spice rack I'd organized, the silverware drawer. "Oh, I just like things my way," she said lightly, smiling. But that smile didn't reach her eyes. Soon, she was scheduling Jonah's doctor appointments without telling me, hosting gatherings without asking if I wanted to join. When I asked if I could bake cookies for Jonah's school event, she replied, "Oh, that's okay, Brenda. They probably prefer something more modern, store-bought." I laughed it off, but that night I found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling fan, wondering when I'd gone from being part of the family to being a houseguest. Still, I held on to the good moments because that's what mothers do. We remember the laughter louder than the silence. We keep hoping kindness will find its way back. And every time Daniel hugged me before leaving for work, I told myself everything was fine. But deep down, I could feel something shifting like a crack spreading quietly across a window pane. You don't notice it at first, until one day the light comes through differently. And that day was coming sooner than I thought. It didn't happen all at once, that's the cruel part. Disrespect doesn't always arrive in shouts or slam doors. Sometimes it slips in through polite smiles and phrases that sound harmless, until you hear what they really mean. The first time Samantha called me Brenda instead of Mom, it was at breakfast. "Brenda, can you pass the butter?" she said casually, eyes fixed on her phone. It caught me off guard, the way a sharp word does when you least expect it. Daniel didn't notice. He was scrolling through the news, sipping his coffee. I passed the butter, smiled faintly, and told myself I was imagining it. But after that, Mom disappeared completely. She used my name in every sentence like she was drawing a line. And when she began telling Jonah, "Ask Grandma if she's busy before you go into her room," it wasn't about respect. It was distance disguised as politeness. It's strange how a house can start to feel unfamiliar even while you're still living in it. The walls were the same, the floors still creaked in the same spots, but I started walking softer, speaking less, taking up less space. Samantha would host small gatherings in the living room, wine glasses, laughter, co-workers from her office, and I'd stay upstairs pretending to be asleep. One night, I came down for some water and overheard her say, "She's sweet, but it's exhausting having her here all the time. I just want our space back, you know?" The laughter that followed was like glass breaking in my chest. I froze halfway down the stairs, gripping the banister. For a second, I wanted to walk into that room, to remind her that I was the one who helped buy this house, that I had packed up my life and my grief to be here. But I didn't. I turned around and went back upstairs, one slow step at a time, because I knew Daniel wouldn't have known what to say. The next morning, I pretended nothing happened. I made coffee, fried eggs, and smiled like everything was the same. That's what years of being a mother teach you, how to keep love alive even when it hurts. Still, I started noticing little things. When I'd cook dinner, Samantha would correct my seasoning, saying, "It's good, Brenda, but people these days prefer lighter flavors." She began changing the furniture arrangement without asking, moving my favorite armchair out of the living room because it didn't match the aesthetic. Once, when Daniel was away on a business trip, she even suggested I spend a few nights at a friend's house for a change of scenery. I laughed softly and said, "This is my change of scenery." But that night, when I went to bed, the silence felt heavy enough to crush me. I tried to remind myself of the good things, Jonah's laughter, Daniel's gentle heart. Whenever Jonah ran into my arms yelling, "Grandma," I'd forget the ache for a while. I'd braid his curls, tell him stories, and tuck him in even when Samantha rolled her eyes because I spoiled him with old-fashioned bedtime tales. But one afternoon, as I was folding laundry in the guest room, I heard her on the phone again. "Yes, she's still here," she said. "I know, right? It's like living with a ghost." That word ghost stayed with me for days. I wanted to tell her ghosts don't feel pain, but I did, every single day. Then the changes became practical. She started locking certain cabinets for organization, she said. My name disappeared from the mailbox. When Daniel's company hosted a family picnic, I found out through Facebook photos. And yet, every evening when Daniel came home, I still smiled and asked, "How was your day, son?" Because I didn't want to make him choose. I didn't want him to see his mother as the reason his marriage was strained. Still, I could tell something inside me was breaking, a quiet fracture spreading from one ignored moment to another. One evening, as I was tucking Jonah into bed, he looked at me with his sleepy little eyes and whispered, "Grandma, why doesn't Mommy like you anymore?" My throat tightened. I kissed his forehead and said, "Sometimes people forget how to be kind, sweetheart, but that doesn't mean we stop being kind to them." When I turned off his nightlight, I sat there for a moment longer, listening to his breathing. And that's when it hit me. Kindness without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. But I wasn't ready to surrender, not yet. Because soon Samantha's promotion would change everything, and it would show me just how invisible I'd become. The morning Samantha got the call about her promotion, the entire house buzzed with excitement. She came down the stairs in her silk robe, phone in hand, voice trembling with joy. "I got it," she cried, waving her phone. "Regional manager. Do you hear me, Daniel? I got it." Daniel jumped up from the kitchen table and hugged her, spinning her around. Jonah clapped, laughing because everyone else was laughing. And I smiled too, because that's what you do when you love someone even if they haven't loved you back for a while. That whole week, Samantha was glowing. Packages arrived at the door. New dresses, heels, jewelry. She spent hours on the phone arranging a celebration dinner. I didn't think much of it. After all, she always made a big deal out of these milestones. One morning, I asked gently, "What should I wear, dear? Something formal or—" She looked up from her laptop, blinking like she'd forgotten I was even there. "Oh," she said finally, "it's actually more of a company dinner. Just work people. Nothing fancy." But that evening, I overheard Daniel talking about the restaurant, one of those high-end places with valet parking and crystal chandeliers. I should have asked again. I should have made her say the truth out loud. Instead, I baked Jonah's favorite banana bread, wrapped it in foil, and told myself maybe they'd bring me back a slice of dessert. Saturday night arrived. I heard the rush of heels on tile, the faint smell of perfume drifting down the hall. Samantha came downstairs in a shimmering gold dress, her hair in soft curls. Daniel looked proud. Jonah wore a little bow tie and sneakers that lit up when he walked. I stood by the kitchen counter, hands folded. "You all look wonderful," I said softly. Daniel smiled and kissed my cheek. "We won't be too late, Mom." Samantha added, "Yes, we'll bring you something." She said it like a throwaway promise, the kind people make to ease guilt they don't plan to feel. And then they left. The door clicked shut. Their laughter echoed down the driveway before fading into the night. I stood in the empty hallway for a long time. The house was quiet, too quiet. I turned off the lights, made myself a cup of tea, and sat at the dining table they'd just left. 3 untouched candles stood in the center, wicks still white. I stared at the empty chairs and tried not to think about how foolish I must have looked, waiting for an invitation that never came. The clock ticked louder than usual. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a dog barked somewhere far away. I thought about Raymond, how he would have told me to get my coat and treat myself to dinner, too. But grief has a way of making you small, and habit makes it worse. So I stayed home. Hours later, I checked my phone. The first photo popped up on my feed, Samantha smiling in that golden dress, champagne in hand. The caption read, "So proud of this beautiful family that made tonight perfect." There they were, Daniel, Jonah, Samantha. All 3 sitting at a long table with her coworkers' plates full, laughter frozen in time. And me? I was behind the lens that didn't exist in their world anymore. At 10:43 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message. "There are leftovers in the fridge. Heat them up so they don't go to waste." That's all she wrote. No thank you for helping with Jonah this week. No wish you were here. Just leftovers. For a moment I couldn't breathe, not because of the cruelty of it, but because of how casual it was. That kind of dismissal doesn't scream. It whispers, and the whisper hurts worse. I typed one word back. Okay. And that was it. No anger, no begging, no more pretending. I stood up, poured out my cold tea, and looked around the kitchen one last time. The walls I'd cleaned, the curtains I'd sewn, the table I'd polished, none of it felt like mine anymore. I went upstairs and opened my suitcase, the same one I'd used when I moved in. I folded my clothes neatly. I packed Raymond's photo, my Bible, Jonah's drawings. I looked around the room, spotless, quiet, and whispered to myself, "This is not a home. This is a waiting room." When dawn came, I slipped out. No notes, no noise, just silence. But I didn't go far. Not yet. Because when you've built a life around people who stop seeing you, walking away isn't just leaving. It's learning how to exist again. And as it turns out, my leaving would uncover something much darker than hurt feelings. Something that showed me who Samantha really was. The sky was still gray when I closed the door behind me. No one saw me leave. No one tried to stop me. The world outside was quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes before sunrise, when even the birds haven't found their voices yet. I carried one suitcase and Raymond's photo tucked under my arm. That was all I needed. Everything else in that house, the curtains I'd sewn, the dishes I'd bought, the memories I'd tried to preserve no longer belonged to me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel old. I felt light, like a woman walking away from a storm that had already passed. I took the early bus out of town to the coast. My friend Marjorie owned a small guest house there, white walls, blue shutters, always smelling faintly of salt and lemon polish. When I called her the night before, my voice trembling, she didn't ask for explanations. She just said, "Come, Brenda, there's a room waiting for you." When I arrived, she hugged me like someone who already knew the weight I was carrying. "You look tired," she said softly. "I've been tired for a long time," I replied. She led me to a room facing the sea, small but warm, with a view of the sunrise. I unpacked in silence, folded my clothes neatly into the dresser, and placed Raymond's photo on the nightstand. His smile, frozen in time, seemed to say, "You did the right thing." That first morning, I made myself tea and sat by the window, watching the light spill across the water. The waves didn't care who I was or what I'd left behind. And for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. Marjorie joined me later with a plate of toast. "So," she said, "you finally left that house?" I nodded. She didn't look surprised. "I've been wondering how long it would take," she murmured. "You used to sound so alive when you talked about your family. Lately it was like you were describing strangers." Her words hit me deep, because that's exactly what they had become, strangers who shared my blood but not my heart. Over the next few days, I tried to rebuild small routines. Morning walks along the sand, reading on the porch until dusk, cooking for one, something I hadn't done in years. And every night I'd whisper a quiet prayer of gratitude, not for what I had, but for what I'd finally released. But peace doesn't come without ghosts. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night, hearing Jonah's laughter in my dreams. I'd see his little hands waving as he ran toward me, calling, "Grandma!" Then I'd remember that I'd left him behind in that house, and my heart would ache in ways words can't explain. I told myself I'd call soon, but not yet. I needed to breathe first to remember who I was outside of their world. One afternoon, while I was helping Marjorie sort through boxes in her attic, she paused suddenly. "Brenda," she said carefully, holding something in her hand, "did you ever sell that old jewelry set Raymond gave you?" I frowned. "No, of course not. Why?" She hesitated. "Because a few months ago, Samantha stopped by my cafe. She said she was thinking of selling some pieces for you. She even showed me pictures." I froze. "She what?" Marjorie nodded slowly. "I didn't believe her. I told her to have you call me. She said you were too tired to deal with it and wanted her to handle everything. I told her no." A chill crawled up my spine. That jewelry wasn't just valuable, it was sentimental. Raymond had saved for months to buy it. I'd kept it locked in the small box inside my dresser, the one I didn't pack because I thought it was safe. I realized then that my leaving hadn't just been an escape. It had been timely. Because if I hadn't left, I might have lost more than just dignity. I might have lost everything Raymond left behind. That night, I called Daniel. He didn't pick up. I left a simple voicemail. "Son, I've moved out. I'm safe. I'll reach out when I'm ready." No anger, no explanation, just peace. But I couldn't shake the thought of that jewelry box. Not because of the money, but because of what it meant. If Samantha had lied about that, what else had she lied about? The next morning, as the waves rolled in, I sat on the porch holding my tea and thought about how strange it is that people can live under one roof and still inhabit completely different worlds. I had loved them with everything I had, my time, my savings, my silence, and in return they'd given me indifference wrapped in politeness. But the thing about silence is it's not weakness, it's a warning. And soon, that silence of mine was going to speak louder than any words I could have said, because when I left, I didn't just take my suitcase. I took the truth with me. For a few days, there was nothing but quiet. No calls, no texts, not even a missed message. It was as if my absence hadn't created a gap at all, just a small silence they didn't notice. But I knew better. Silence always unsettles the guilty. On the third evening, as I sat with Marjorie watching the sky turn gold over the sea, my phone finally buzzed. Daniel. Mom, where are you? Samantha said you just left? His voice was tight, confused, maybe even scared. I'm fine, I said gently. I needed a little peace, that's all. There was a pause. You should have told me. I did, just not in words you were ready to hear. He sighed. Samantha's worried. I almost laughed. I'm sure she is. But I didn't say more. I wanted him to sit in the quiet the way I had long enough to hear what the silence had to say. That same night, they came home from another dinner, this one. Not a celebration, but a surprise. My room was empty, the bed made, the closet bare. On the dresser sat a single envelope with their names written in my hand. Inside was a short note, Daniel and Samantha. Thank you for letting me stay with you. I've realized it's time for me to find my own peace again, somewhere I'm wanted, not tolerated. Please don't worry about me. The house is spotless. The bills are paid, and Jonah's things are where they belong. Be kind to each other, and be careful with what you value. Not everything can be replaced. Brenda. I heard later that Samantha went pale as snow when she read that last line. 2 days later, Daniel drove to the coast. He found me sitting on Marjorie's porch, a cup of tea in my hands. He looked older, shoulders heavy, eyes searching mine for anger that wasn't there. Mom, he said quietly, what happened? I gestured for him to sit. Nothing new, Daniel. It's what's been happening for a long time. He ran a hand through his hair. Samantha said you left because of something she texted? I smiled faintly. She told me there were leftovers in the fridge, and she was right. I just didn't tell her which leftovers I was leaving behind. He blinked, confused. What do you mean? Disrespect, I said softly. It piles up like cold food. Eventually, it starts to rot. He looked down, guilt flooding his face. Mom, I didn't realize. I know, I interrupted gently. You were trying to keep the peace. But sometimes keeping the peace means standing in silence while someone tears it apart. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. Before he left that evening, he said something that stayed with me. Samantha wants to apologize. I raised an eyebrow. Or explain. He hesitated. Both, maybe. Then tell her this, I said. Apologies don't come through other people. She knows where to find me. 3 days later, Daniel came back again, this time looking shaken. She did something, didn't she? I asked quietly. He nodded, jaw tight. I found a transfer from your savings account from months ago, $4,800. I thought you'd given her permission. My stomach dropped. What? He nodded again, showing me a screenshot. She said it was for house expenses. But Mom, she used it for that dinner, the promotion one. I went still. You mean the dinner I wasn't invited to? Yes. He took a deep breath. And it wasn't even her promotion. She got a small team assignment she just wanted to show off. The words hit me like waves, not because of the money, but because of the deceit. Every little kindness I'd given her, she'd turned into currency. Daniel buried his face in his hands. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have seen it. I reached across the table and touched his hand. You see it now. That's what matters. He looked up, eyes red. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said simply. You can't win peace by fighting people who live off chaos. Let truth do what truth does. It always finds its way home. That night, I sat by the sea and let the wind sting my face. There was pain in knowing my silence had forced this truth into the open, but also relief. Because sometimes, walking away isn't retreat, it's revelation. And I knew, before long, everything that needed to fall apart would. The next week would bring that reckoning, loud, messy, and long overdue. And for the first time, it wouldn't be me who spoke. It would be Daniel. Because when he finally confronted Samantha, even I couldn't have imagined how far her lies had gone or how fast her world would crumble. It was a Friday afternoon when Daniel called again. His voice sounded different, tight, distant, as if every word he spoke had to fight its way past disbelief as, "Mom," he said. I confronted her. I put down my teacup. The waves outside my window crashed against the shore, steady and cold. And he took a long breath. She didn't deny it. He told me everything. How he'd waited until Jonah was at school, then laid out the bank statements on the kitchen table. How Samantha had stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp as glass. She said it wasn't a big deal, he said bitterly, that you wouldn't miss it. She called it a family investment. I could almost hear the echo of those words in my own chest, that same dismissive tone she used when telling me which shelf my teacups belonged on. And when I told her I knew about the jewelry box, he continued, voice trembling. She froze. "The jewelry," I whispered. He nodded. "She tried to pawn it, Mom. She took pictures, had them appraised, even called a buyer. When the store asked for proof of ownership, she backed out." I closed my eyes. For a moment, I couldn't tell whether the sting in my chest was anger or heartbreak. Probably both. "She started crying," Daniel went on, his voice softer now. "Said she only did it because she felt unappreciated, that you were always in her shadow, that I compared her to you." A dry laugh escaped my lips. Imagine that, being compared to someone you won't even eat dinner with. He didn't laugh. I told her to stop. I told her I loved her, but this was cruel. She lost it, Mom. Said you'd turned me against her, that you'd left to make her look bad. "And what did you say?" "I said you didn't need to make her look bad. She was doing fine on her own." There was a long silence on the line, only the sound of his breathing, uneven and tired. Then he said something that broke me a little. "Mom, I think I failed both of you. I should have protected you from this." I took a slow breath. "You didn't fail me, Daniel. You just didn't see the truth yet, but now you do, and that's enough." He was quiet for a long time. Then softly, "She's leaving for her mother's place. Says she needs time to think." "Let her," I said. "Time is a way of showing people what apologies can't." A week passed, then 2. Samantha didn't call, didn't text, but word travels fast in small towns. Marjorie came home from the market one morning, shaking her head. "Guess what I heard," she said, setting down her groceries. "Your daughter-in-law's company found out she'd been submitting false expense claims. Apparently, that dinner was filed under a client meeting." I blinked. "You're joking." "No, they found out the guests weren't clients at all. It's under review." I leaned back in my chair, feeling neither joy nor vengeance, just a strange, heavy peace. Life has a way of balancing its own scales, even when we step aside. 2 nights later, Daniel showed up again. This time he didn't knock, just stood by the gate, staring at the sea until I joined him. "She's been suspended," he said quietly. "HR is investigating." I nodded slowly. "And how are you?" He hesitated. Lost, angry, but relieved too. "That's the sound of truth finally breathing," I said. "Uncomfortable, but honest." He looked at me, then really looked. "Mom, will you come home?" I shook my head gently. "No, sweetheart. That house isn't my home anymore. You and Jonah can visit me here. There's plenty of room for peace, not much for bitterness." He smiled faintly, tears in his eyes. "Jonah asks about you every night." "Then bring him," I said softly. "He deserves to know that love can exist outside of pain." When he left that night, I stayed on the porch long after the lights from his car disappeared. The air smelled of salt and new beginnings. I thought about how strange it was how leaving could bring you closer to people than staying ever did. I wasn't angry anymore, not at Samantha, not even at myself. Anger binds you to what hurt you. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, cuts the rope. And I was done being tied to pain. But even in peace, life had one more surprise for me, one last twist I hadn't seen coming. Because sometimes, when you stop chasing what's gone, what you truly deserve finds its way back. And for me, it arrived in the form of a knock on my door one quiet Sunday morning. It was a quiet Sunday morning when I heard it. 3 gentle knocks on my door. The kind of knock that carries hesitation, maybe even hope. When I opened it, I found Jonah, clutching a crumpled bouquet of wildflowers, and behind him, Daniel, eyes tired but softer than I'd seen in years. "Grandma," Jonah said shyly, holding out the flowers, "Daddy said we can stay for the weekend. Is that okay?" I knelt down, took the flowers, and hugged him so tight he laughed. "That's more than okay, sweetheart," I whispered. "That's perfect." The next 2 days felt like healing in slow motion. Jonah ran along the shore, chasing waves that always outran him. Daniel helped me fix the porch railing that had been loose for months. We cooked dinner together, not fancy, just simple food made with laughter and forgiveness. At one point, Daniel looked around the small seaside cottage and said quietly, "I get it now, Mom. This is peace." I smiled. "Peace isn't something you find in a house, Daniel. It's something you build inside yourself once you stop begging others to hand it to you." He nodded, eyes glistening, and whispered, "Thank you for still being my mother." "Always," I said. "That's the one job I never quit." Later that evening, after Jonah had fallen asleep on the couch, Daniel told me Samantha had officially lost her position. "They let her go," he said softly. "She's moving back in with her mother for a while, says she needs to figure things out." I didn't gloat. I didn't wish her harm. I just stirred my tea and said, sometimes falling apart is the only way some people learn what holds them together. He sighed. "I don't know what happens next, but I want to do better for Jonah, for myself, for you." "Then start by forgiving yourself," I said, "and don't look back. The rearview mirror is smaller than the windshield for a reason." That night, after they went to bed, I sat alone on the porch. The moonlight shimmered across the sea like spilled silver, and I could hear the waves whispering against the rocks below. It felt like they were talking to me, reminding me how far I'd come. I thought about everything I'd lost, everything I'd given, and everything I'd gained in return. There was grief, yes, but also gratitude. I realized that leaving that house hadn't been an act of anger. It was an act of self-respect. I hadn't walked away to punish them. I'd walked away to save what was left of me. A few weeks later, Samantha called. Her voice was small, unsure. "Brenda," she said quietly, "I know I don't deserve it, but thank you for not ruining me." I paused. "I never wanted to ruin you, Samantha. I just wanted you to see me." She was silent for a long time. Then she said, "I do now, and I'm sorry." "Good," I said gently. "Then maybe next time you sit at a table, you'll remember the ones who helped build it." And then for the first time, I meant it when I said, "Take care of yourself." Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself from someone else's shadow and walking into your own light. Months passed. The cottage became my sanctuary, a place filled with morning sunlight, the smell of coffee, and the sound of Jonah's laughter echoing down the hallway when he visited. I started volunteering at the local library, reading stories to children every Thursday. Some days I'd see women around my age sitting quietly in the back, eyes glistening as they listened. I knew that look, the ache of being unappreciated, the loneliness of giving too much. After each session, one or two would come up and whisper, "Your stories remind me of my life." And I'd smile and say, then maybe it's time you start writing your next chapter. Because that's what I'd done, written a new chapter. Not out of revenge, but out of remembrance mount. Not to prove a point, but to reclaim my worth. I learned that sometimes the loudest way to demand respect is to walk away in silence. That sometimes the only way to be seen is to stop standing where you're invisible. And when I look at Jonah now running on the beach, laughing freely, I know I didn't lose a family. I found peace. And maybe that's what family was supposed to be all along. When I packed my bags that night, I thought I was walking away from a home. But I see it now. I wasn't leaving something behind. I was walking toward myself,